Have you ever finished a long day feeling exhausted, only to realize that very little actually moved forward? Perhaps you replied to emails, returned phone calls, attended meetings, responded to messages, handled unexpected issues, solved immediate problems. You were busy all day, and yet, somehow, the thing that mattered most barely moved. There's a distinction between activity and progress. They can look similar from the outside. They're often very different experiences. Activity is movement, but progress is movement in a meaningful direction. And sometimes we become so focused on staying in motion that we stop asking whether we're actually moving forward. One challenge is that activity often feels productive. There's a sense of accomplishment from crossing things off a list, responding to messages, attending meetings, handling an urgent request. These things often feel necessary, and many of them are, but activity can also become a substitute for clarity. And when priorities are unclear, it's easy to focus on what's immediately in front of us: the email, the notification, the latest request, the small problem demanding attention. And before long, the urgent begins to crowd out the important. I've noticed that many projects don't lose momentum because people stop caring. They lose momentum when attention becomes fragmented. Energy becomes scattered across too many competing priorities. Everyone stays busy, but the work that matters most receives less and less focus. The result, it's an interesting paradox. People feel increasingly overwhelmed while making less meaningful progress. Not because they're doing too little, but actually they're doing too much that isn't moving the project forward. Here's a question I find helpful and also surprisingly simple. What would meaningful progress actually look like? Not activity, not effort, not motion, progress. If we were to look back 30 days from now, what would tell us something important truly moved forward? Often the answer is much simpler than we expect. A decision made, a bottleneck removed, a conversation completed, a priority clarified, a next step identified. These things don't always create the feeling of being busy, but they often create momentum. And momentum has a way of making everything else easier. I think that's why clarity matters so much. Clarity helps us distinguish between what is merely consuming our attention and what is truly deserving of it. Because activity alone, it can continue indefinitely. Progress requires direction, and direction requires clarity. The goal isn't to eliminate activity. The goal is to ensure that activity is serving something meaningful. At the end of the day, movement by itself, it's not the objective. Forward movement is. And there's an important distinction between the two.